I bought a 25-foot cable to go from the computer to the router, which is what everybody wants to hear at the top. Hey, everybody, sponsored by Amazon. You can buy 25-foot Ethernet cable on Amazon for $12.
So technically, you could take your computer outside now, and you could have this meeting from outside. That's great.
We could do that. How many inches of snow did y'all get?
Ours was 7.
That much.
That many inches.
That much.
All right.
What's a biblical measurement?
Cubit. So elbow.
Cubit. How many cubits did y'all get?
Half a cubit.
Half a cubit. So, John, in the Bible software that you just bought, John and I are both Logos Bible software users. There's a measurements tool where you can see biblical measurements, and they always do it at conferences where they do measurements, but they do it in like school buses in Wales. And so the running, it's the crazy, and people get amazed at it. Like, what? We can see how long the Noah's Ark was in a school bus. And but that's always the joke from some of us, like when they do their demos of "Here comes the whales and buses," or "Here comes the buses and whales." It's like the dumbest feature of the software. It's like, but people love that stuff. Man, it is snowy. Especially. It's crazy.
How many of us seen whales all the time?
Do all the whales have a little Jonah in them? You know, like that one.
Man, that'd be pretty good. I'll suggest that to the people of put some Jonahs in the whales. Good to see y'all today. And we want to sit down and talk about our sermon from Sunday here for the next minute with the ministers. Also want to say, so excited for our next sermon series in Revelation. Was looking at stuff last night and again this morning, and I'm just very excited about this series of really, it is Jesus. It's the first 3 words are apocalypse or revelation, Jesus Christ. And so it's a revelation about Jesus. And it's really by Jesus, because the pattern is it's from God to Jesus to the angel to John. And so it's this revelation by and about Jesus. And then in verse 3, we get these wonderful words of hear, obey, or hear, read, and obey. And so what we want to do over the next 6 weeks is go from making it mysterious to really making it meaningful. And so much of Revelation is often it's read poorly. It's read badly. In fact, I think it was Luther who didn't even want people to read it because he's like, I don't even know what this means. And so, and people do the strangest things with the book, but it was written to real people with real situations. And it's really the idea of going from mystery. It's the unveiling of who Jesus is. There's 7 Beatitudes, and one of the first Beatitudes is in verse 3. And so it's really a blessing to comfort believers, both in the first century and in our culture today. So I'm very excited about this series. Both Dave and John are going to be preaching through this series. So it's going to be a good thing. And hopefully by the end, it'll make Revelation a little bit more manageable for everyone. I think, guys, we missed the forest with the trees, or we missed the forest for the trees in the book. And so to step back and say, hey, what's the big picture? And to know it's a book by and about Jesus, and we don't have to be scared of it. And it's also okay to say we don't understand everything about it because it was written 2,000 years ago, and that's okay. But to get the big things, we'll be okay. But today we're talking about gospel culture. We finished up our series, and guys, so we've been 7-8 weeks now in gospel culture. What's one thing for you all that has kind of stood out in the series, maybe in your small group or something in the sermon or one of the texts that we were in? Like, what's one thing that comes to mind now for us at the end of the series when we're like, gospel culture, this is what God has been doing on my heart?
Yeah, that's a good one. You know, I think one of the takeaways I'm kind of hearing and sensing is just the fact that the gospel still speaks to us today. Like whenever we took this idea of, you know, the gospel, which includes us following King Jesus and learning more about Jesus and being formed by Jesus, and like that's part of the gospel too, then it seems like everything that we do, even now, is because of the gospel. It's for the gospel. It's in light of the gospel. It's empowered by the gospel. And there's just something about that, you know, is a lot more powerful than just, I accepted the gospel. I know I'm going to heaven, and now I've got to live this life that's hard, but, you know, the gospel doesn't have anything to do with it now because I've already kind of made that decision for Christ, whereas if we're following Jesus daily, and that's one of our takeaways of reading the gospel and hearing the gospel and living the gospel, then what we do now matters. And I think that's kind of, life changing in a lot of ways.
Exactly. It's part of that piece of waking up every morning and experiencing gospel again. That it's this like sense of, sleep, but then just rising up and understanding that good news approaches me today and good news approaches this world today. And how do I live that out? How do I let that culture, this kingdom just be expanded to my engagements, my interactions, my daily dealings with others, where it's just a little bit of experiencing of good news, even if it's interactions that just people aren't, you already know that people haven't experienced or accepted the invitation to this good news, but it's still like, man, I can be that person who just brings it in. I can be that good Samaritan who still just reaches out, who still comes around and allows good news to stretch. He allows good news to reach, and it be a small seed, a small witness to Judea, Samaria, ends of the earth, wherever it's at. That gospel culture speaks daily to us, daily, and not just, hey, it's small group house church night or it's Sunday morning.
Yeah, that's good. And the takeaway for me was like, if we're supposed to follow Jesus and take all the things he said in, I feel like the three of us probably on average, when we think of the whole world, at least the whole church, we probably, we've been to school, we know this book, like we know the stories of Jesus, and yet how few times I think like that, like, I wonder what Jesus would do here, or trying to connect those, like I know it, but I don't think I know it. Like all the times we were in the Gospels several times throughout this series, I was like, oh, there's things I forgot there that, or I've not seen that before. And like, how many times have I read this book and to slow down? And so I think for me of like a humbling thing to saying, yeah, I know it, but man, I still really, I don't know it as well as I need to or should. And so in some ways that's encouraging because you never outgrow your need to hear the story of Jesus. There's always something new to go on. So for me, definitely a humbling thing. Well, Sunday we were in Mark 10, 32. We've got two wonderful stories of Jesus. He's able to, he's just great. And I mean, all the stories, but to me, this week was very impactful with Jesus working with the disciples where they're trying to vie for power and position. And then kind of the faith of blind Bartimaeus who keeps crying out, Son of God, have mercy. And one of the themes that I had on Sunday was this idea of mercy. And boy, I don't know about you, but I didn't talk about application so much Sunday, but what was in my heart was like the mercy that I need to show people who view things different than me politically, or like things being so divisive right now. And that call, if God's been merciful to me, I'm then supposed to extend that mercy to other people, kind of as a sub point of the passage, not the main point of the story. So like, how are y'all doing with showing mercy to people? Because some days I feel like I'm absolutely wretched at it. I'm awful. Some days are better than other, but in your walk with Jesus, like how is showing mercy? How do you do it?
It's one of those, again, just that daily and I don't know, temporal, the timing of it, because you're right, exactly, with the different emotions or states that you could kind of run through, and showing mercy even to my boys about how much right now as they're home for the week, what they know, what's going on. Everett asked a question the other day about his homework that I'm like, this is a basic definition of something you learned in first grade. Like, why are you asking this now in third grade? Mm-hmm. And Christy looking at me and being like, that's not helpful to him. And that's not a way to respond. And, again, my mistake, my inability to show mercy in this moment of, hey, it's just schoolwork. And sure, there's a push, and sure, there's a definition here that I'm wanting, to have Everett to have this common knowledge and to move through, because for me, it's like if you can pace yourself a lot faster, then you're done faster. But why are you slowing down on these little things? And so I think, again, when you have to wake up to this gospel culture and try to experience it every day, then it is those moments that make you slow down, because it is I mean, even our kids crying out for just, hey, just some mercy from my own parents would be great right now.
They're blind Bartimaeus.
Or
I
at
think,
least for my dad would be great. So,
Yeah, yeah. Like for me, so when it comes to mercy, it's even these concepts, like these big things of Christianity, which are so attractive. I don't know how you all feel, but like they're attractive in a general sense. But then when they get specific to specific people or specific situations for my life, it's very hard. So like it's like, yeah, God loves everybody. I'm supposed to love all people. And then I think about the people I'm supposed, like specific situations of my life of, oh, these are the people I'm supposed to love. And I'm like, oh man, that's not, no, that's easier said than done. Right.
yeah, it's almost like you want to tell the guy who the Good Samaritan helped, like, quit walking down the same road and getting jumped. Like, I get it. The Good Samaritan's coming around to get you, and I got to be that guy or whatever. But it'd be great if you just quit taking this route.
Yeah. And
every time.
no, it's good. Do you have anything, Dave? Like mercy? No.
No, I think, I mean, my brain's kind of bouncing around between grace and mercy, and I think, how do you do this practically? I'm like, you got me, that's a tough one because you're right. I think it things like mercy do better if they just stay in the abstract, when we actually have to do it or show it or express it, then that's a whole different ballgame. That's when you're right. This is when it's hard. And yeah, it's like, I mean, I need it. I think I need mercy shown toward me a lot more than anything else, so I'm kind of at that point where, I'm more at the receiving end probably than the giving end, so.
I've told this story before. I was at a sleepover, maybe fifth grade. I think it was in fifth grade, and there were 4 or 5 of us at the house. And downstairs they had this dartboard, and they had this old piece of furniture that I probably stayed with the house. Like it was just old. It was nasty. But we started throwing darts at the furniture, which was apparently an appropriate thing to do in their family. Like nobody cared about it. And so we were doing crazy shots, and I hit the window next to it. And then I broke the glass, and come to find out my friend had to pay for it. And that sort of idea of the gospel has always stayed with me. Of he could have made me pay for it, but he actually paid for me. At like, oh man, I needed mercy. The other thing that came to, I was talking to the girls Sunday night. I was involved in a hit and run in high school. Yeah, John, you had the face my dad had when the cops called him.
Yeah, I was thinking it was like last night or something.
No, it was in high school. And like I hit a Mack truck, and it was, and I freaked out and I ran away, and they got my number. They called the police. I had called mom, but mom for some reason didn't call dad, and mom was a much safer person for me to call than my dad. I should have called my dad though. And so the cops called dad, and man, he was upset. The truck driver, they decided not to press charges, but that was one of those watershed moments for me of like, 1, the mercy, and 2, never run from trouble. Like it only makes things worse when we run from trouble. And so like this blind guy, Bartimaeus, not running, but saying, no, I'm going to cry out all the more. I'm going to stay here in my blindness and cry out to Jesus. Cause physically he's been hit by a Mack truck. To me, that story in my life has always been like, oh, that's why I need mercy. Cause I'm such a screw up. Like, I could have been, I don't know what it would have been, but before the judge, it would have been awful.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been awful. So that's kind of Mark 10. So we have wrapped up our gospel culture series. I think it was well. I think our house church is so proud. Dave, do you have anything to say to our house church leaders? Are you good? I think do you have family in the room?
I saw a kid. I saw some hair.
And everybody's got kids.
Ben's got this little noisy duck running around. So
You got it.
Well,
what'd you say?
Do you have any, I'm just proud of our house church leaders through this gospel culture.
Oh yes, that was amazing. That they not only did just about every house church leader do this study, most of them were meeting weekly the best they could. There were some exceptions, I get that, but that was awesome. In light of pandemic, in light of everything, just to be consistent and just saying, hey, this is good stuff. Let's let's have these kind of conversations, and anytime you try to take a workbook and say, here, do this,
Yeah.
there's always pushback. And it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. But, but then it was neat. And I actually personally loved groups kind of reciting the Jesus Creed together and or praying the Jesus prayer together. For whatever reason, that was really powerful. And it was just great to see it. Like there was another layer of consistency and unity along the church of us kind of doing that. And then like you're saying, everything kind of came back to, loving God and loving others as a summary of what this gospel culture is and what they're passionate about, what it looks like, so, but yeah, house church leaders did a phenomenal job. Just amazing, amazing, amazing. So props to them. Kudos to them. It was great.
I love those prayers. And I love written prayers the older I get, just because when I don't know what to pray, I get to pray something that I know is in line with the heart of God. And and so instead of God, instead of my thoughts being the thing that leads my prayers, it's God's thoughts that lead my prayers. And so, I find value more and more in the written prayer than I used to. So John, any last thoughts, words, snide remarks, funny jokes before we go?
No, not really. You did a great job.
No safety tips.
No. Okay. Well, I say you did a great job Sunday and putting the disciples and their "What would you have me do for you?" and blind Bartimaeus is "What would you have me do for you?" And bringing out the stories there was a beautiful job. And just if you haven't listened to the sermon, go back and listen to it. It's just a good way to put that power into that mercy into play and allow us to focus on like what we're talking about here at the end of the gospel culture, what mercy we need to be showing to others around us.
That's a good encouragement. I just put the sermon up. It's on YouTube now, Sunday sermon, but if you just want the sermon, it's on our website as of about 15 minutes ago. So
right.
It's certainly live. So Little Rock Church, we love you so much. God loves you. He shows his mercy to us every day. And we're praying for you. Join us Sunday as we start the Behold the Lamb sermon series. And, if you're watching this, read Revelation 1, and in particular, verses 1 through 3 is where we're going to look at, and just kind of let the words wash over you. Read it over and over again, once a day, maybe. And just, think about that through the day about what the blessing that Jesus has for you, for those who obey this book. So, Lord willing, we'll see you all Sunday. We'll let word out, if snow happens or what. I'm hope it doesn't, but we'll let everybody know what's going to happen in plenty of time. We'll have the heat on, and that's it. So we'll see y'all later.